You probably use ADP for payroll, just like I have for many, many years for our different companies. But did you know that ADP does other things as well? And the R&D tax credit is something that we've known about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us that are technology companies, we build software, and we know that we can get some of that money back from the government in the United States and in Canada. But there's also a lot of fraud
Sure.
with R&D tax credits. A lot of people, because the government knows that people are just submitting this stuff to try to cheat the system. And today we have Blake from ADP, and he's going to answer some of our questions and talk about how ADP does it, as opposed to the way of a lot of these other guys that will claim they can get you that money back from the government do it.
100%. Yeah, definitely an underutilized, underclaimed tax credit. So kind of that's my role, is to fill the void between, a company and their understanding and education, and hopefully bring back some tax credits and some tax money back to the organization.
So a lot of people don't even know what an R&D tax credit is.
Yeah.
And they might already have several engineers on their team.
Sure.
And they don't know that you can capitalize that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're spending money hiring developers that are building some kind of software, and they don't realize that there's a tax credit. So explain to people, how does that work? How do people qualify? How does this program operate?
Yeah, 100%. So this is a state and a federal tax credit, depending on what state you're operating in. When you look at the R&D tax credit from a bird's eye view, it's designed to give back to those organizations that are spending time, money, resources, whether it's developing or improving a product, a process, a manufacturing process, technique, formula, or an invention, right? So if you're spending time, money, resources in those areas, there's a state and a federal tax credit designed to lower a business's tax liability, right? So hopefully it encourages more companies to spend time on R&D.
What I've seen is a lot of companies, they know that they've heard of the R&D tax credit.
Sure.
They know that, they're building some software, they have some kind of IP, they're designing a medical device,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that a lot of people have tried to apply for it and they get rejected because they didn't properly document how the stuff is being built out, the project management stuff, the stuff inside their technical systems. Maybe they're using like a Jira or a Basecamp for tracking engineering, for tracking the IP, tracking the rollout, so they can separate out the different components of R&D, of building out these tools. There's a lot of guys that will claim that they have AI software that will document everything you need to send to Uncle Sam for the R&D tax credits. But you guys have a different approach.
Yeah, so we like to take more of that human element, that human approach, right? We do have some competitors that are utilizing AI to kind of streamline and become a little bit more efficient. However, that puts the burden of the work back to the business, the organization, rather than letting the expert really flex their expertise, right? So our approach is we have a team of over 250, I think just under 300 tax credit specialists. Those are our subject matter experts, everything from, attorneys to accountants to engineers, scientists, you name it. And our goal is to match up whatever industry we're working with the subject matter expert of that field, right? So they can speak very high level to the specifics that will qualify to help maximize the tax credit, right? So we can do the majority of the leg lifting, and the company receives the benefit.
So let's say, we're a software company and we're building tools for local service businesses, building these AI agents and whatnot. And we've got a team of engineers and we're tracking everything inside our project management and technical systems. We're logging all of the code and whatnot. How would that work with you guys? And how would we, how do you guys charge to as part of that? How would we, walk me through what the onboarding process is, how we can expect, what percent, how much money can we get back? What do you take of that?
Great question. So our process is more education focused, right? So the beautiful thing is, there's no upfront fee cost associated, right, to sitting down with us. Our goal is to help fill that void from an education standpoint, right? There's 2/3 of eligible businesses out there that are not currently taking advantage of the tax credit. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because there's a knowledge gap. There's a lack of understanding, right, within the business community we're here to help fill that void, right? So we sit down with the company, we understand more of kind of the baseline information, what they're doing behind the scenes, what's the entity structure. We provide a bit of education to help understand, or to help the company understand a little bit of background about the tax credit as a whole. And then our goal through the conversation is to determine, A, do you qualify, right? And if so, can we give you a back of the napkin estimate to the potential tax credit on the table, right? And then it allows the organization to determine, hey, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is this tax credit going to be impactful for the organization? Is it something we want to pursue? And if so, we can chat through next steps, our service and support model, right? Say a client does say, hey, Blake, $50,000 tax credit, we want to pursue it, right? We would allow them to sign a master service agreement. And then we would support them with a subject matter expert, right? We would have a kickoff call and then a technical call and some document collection, right, to allow our backend team to do the complete and comprehensive study to deliver back. From a service fee perspective, our service fee never exceeds 25% of the gross credit. And then from a credit standpoint, typically you're able to allocate expenses from 4 different buckets that'll make up the tax credit itself. You'll look at wages, which is, box 1 W-2 wages of those employees that are directly involved or supervising the R&D activities. You can look at contractor expenses or 1099, anything you outsource from a research and development standpoint. You can look at supplies, like tangible raw materials used in the development. And then you can also look at cloud computing hosting costs. Those all make up what's called QREs, qualified research expenditure. And then the IRS allows us to take around 6 to 8% of QREs, and that comes out in the form of the dollar for dollar tax credit. And
let me ask you a question on that. So a lot of the folks in our community are spending a lot of money on credits with OpenAI. A lot of it just for executing these models, but also for building different sorts of tools. How much of that can we capitalize or use as a tax credit?
Yeah, it really depends, right? So there's a 4-part test that the IRS lays out to determine eligibility of the tax credit. So you have to be able to satisfy this 4-part test, right, to determine, are the activities actually R&D, and will they stand up, if there was an IRS audit, right? So if we can determine that they are R&D activities, again, you can take about 8% of, the total costs involved in those 4 different categories or buckets. So it all depends on the activity and the cost associated to the activity. But typically it's around 8% of those, the cost of the activity.
So basically it has to qualify according to those standards. So it looks like we're actually developing a product as opposed to like operating costs.
Sure. 100%. Yep. And then, when you look at it, there has to be some sort of rights and risk associated to it, right? Like if a company is just outsourcing some contract work to yourself to maybe like engineering work, right? Where they're outsourcing some of the design, then, there's a bit of a haircut from a contractor expense. And then, you have to look at who owns the IP to the, or the rights, right, to the whatever product or, specifics they're designing or developing. So there's, there's some more in-depth from a qualification standpoint. But when you look at it a bird's eye view, there's the 4-part test, and then there's 4 different buckets that they can qualify to make up that tax credit.
Is there a minimum amount, like, $20,000, $50,000 or whatnot, that it becomes worthwhile to pursue all the paperwork and documentation necessary to do this?
Every company is different, right? I think the first thing, it's utilization, right? Is there direct utilization to the tax credit, right? Is there tax liability that this tax credit is going to help offset? That's the first question. And if not, right, you have to look at what's the game plan to profitability, right? Because if your company doesn't see, utilization to the tax credit for 20 years.
But can I offset? Let's say I'm not profitable the first 3 years. Can I offset that later?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So like a couple stipulations that are unique to this tax credit. A, you can go back 3 years, retro, right? So you can uncover any tax credits, R&D tax credits that have been left on the table for 3 years in the past, right? You also have the ability to carry this tax credit forward for up to 20 years. So it's waiting in the wing. It sits on the books as a deferred asset, kind of waiting in the wing to help offset tax liability in the future as you incur it. Right. And that's kind of the traditional way. It's designed to help offset business tax liability. However, when this tax credit became permanent in 2015, they added what's called a payroll offset piece, right? And it was designed for more of the startups, right? The companies who are spending 90% of their resources on research and development, but maybe they haven't come to market with their product. Well, if you haven't come to market, you probably are pre-revenue,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have tax liability,
Right.
right? So there's a lot of companies that want to take advantage. They're spending money in R&D, but they don't have tax liability, so there's nowhere to utilize.
Right.
Well, the IRS came out with a way to help offset or utilize this tax credit as a payroll offset. Right.
Mhm.
So if you're within your first 5 years of generating gross receipts
Mhm.
and under $5 million per year in gross receipt, you can actually take this tax credit and help offset payroll tax liability.
Wow. And that's from the number one payroll company on the planet.
You got it.
Thank you so much, Blake. I didn't
Absolutely.
realize, like, how did you become like the R&D tax credit guy?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've been with ADP 10 years actually in
Wow.
October. Everything from an intern to sales rep to leadership. And, you know, my first 7 years with the company were all in small business sales.
Uh-huh.
So selling payroll, HR, workers' comp, health and benefits, you name it.
Yeah.
You know, and was able to, again, go from intern to sales rep to sales executive to VP. And then ADP expanded their tax credit practice. We've been doing tax credits for over 45 years, but they really have expanded their tax credit practice over the past handful of years.
Yeah.
You know, and I was tapped on the shoulder to help build out our R&D practice 3 years ago, and that's where we've been able to kind of make a big jump. So
Incredible, Blake.
yeah,
And if you're in Silicon Valley or anywhere, I'd encourage you reach out to Blake or his team.
please.
And I'm sure you guys know about ADP, but you might not know about like me. I didn't know about that. You guys, I'm sure you have integrated services too with the R&D tax credit with your payroll already, especially because like you mentioned, the offset on payroll.
Yeah, so
that is so cool.
There's actually interesting. We just rolled out what's called real-time redemption, and it's a way for those companies that are using ADP for payroll and that are also qualifying for a payroll offset, right? Well, we have the payroll data. We're already doing the payroll filings. We have a real-time redemption, which ultimately makes the, rather than waiting for a refund check from the IRS, right, it expedites the utilization of that tax credit.
Yeah.
So we have some unique things that we can help. And again, if you guys are interested in learning a bit more, feel free to tap me on the shoulder. We're here to help.
If you're a startup, this could be some money that you could use, even if you're not making money now, but 3 years, you know, you got 3 years to use it. So Blake, thank you for coming on the
Thank
Digimarcon
you.
show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having
We'll
me.
see you guys in the next episode.
Bye, guys.